Naturally, you're going to want to save a workbook you've just spent hours perfecting. And saving a workbook is easy, and it can be done with relatively no thought whatsoever. Having said that, you should also know that if you give it no thought, it's quite possible you'll never be able to find that workbook again. Okay, that might be a little dire, but it isn't far from the truth. It really is pretty easy to save a workbook onto the network or on your hard drive, and later, when you go to find it, you realize you didn't pay attention to where you saved it. For that reason, I present the Steve Moore's patented 3 questions to ask before saving a file. And here they are. Where's it going? What's it called? And who else needs to use it? By way of an explanation, let's start with a brand new workbook, like the one I have on the screen here. This workbook was just created and it hasn't been saved yet. You'll notice that the name displayed in the title bar is still the generic Book 1 or Book 2 or whatever. This is the name Excel gives a new workbook, and it's supposed to serve as a working name until you save the document and give it a more suitable name. So let's start with this new workbook and go through the process. Now, I'm well aware that there's nothing in this workbook worth saving, but that's okay. It'll still serve our purpose. First, we'll activate the File tab, and then click Save. Notice that the name of the dialog box that opens is Save As. Excel can't save the document for the first time without first asking you the 3 questions. So let's do that. Now I know it doesn't have a list 1, 2, 3 here for those 3 questions, but they're still here, and Excel expects you to know where to go to answer them. The first thing is where it's going. That means what folder are you going to save it into? Are you going to save it onto the network, onto a PC, or onto a flash drive? Where's it going? The answer to that is here in the address bar. Right now, it's going into the Documents folder in the library. This is the default location where Excel wants to save everything, and that'll be fine for us right now. I just want to know that that's where it's going. The next thing we need to know is what's it called, and that's answered here in the File Name box. Right now, Excel suggests Book 1 as a name, but, well, that's not a very good name, so we'll type in something else. How about Empty Workbook? Well, that's what it is, of course. And finally, the third thing we need to answer is who else needs to use this workbook. Now, if you work in an office or you share your work with other people, it's possible somebody else might need to open this document. And if they have an older version of Excel, say Excel 2000, Excel 2003, or something like that, then they're not going to be able to open this document if we save it in its native format. Now, right now, the native format is Excel Workbook. That means that if you try to open it in Excel 2007 or Excel 2010, you'll have no problem at all. But if you want to open it in an earlier version of Excel, anything from Excel 97 to Excel 2003, then those versions aren't going to be able to work with this format. But for now, since we don't expect to be sharing it with anybody, we'll just leave it set to Excel Workbook. So there's our 3 questions. Where's it going? The Documents folder in the library. What's it called? Empty Workbook. And who else needs to use this? Nobody. So it's okay to save it as an Excel workbook in its native 2010 format. All we have to do now is click Save. Once you click Save, Excel takes us back to the Home tab. And here we can see in the title bar that the document's title has been changed from Book 1 to Empty Workbook. So let's type some stuff in our workbook. We'll just type our name here in cell A1. Be sure to hit Enter. Now we're ready to save the workbook again. Let's go back to the File tab. The last time we chose Save from this list, and the Save As dialog box opened. This time if we choose Save, the dialog box won't appear. Instead, Excel will simply replace our original version of Empty Workbook with this new modified version with our name in it. Excel considers this an update of the original file, and it doesn't warn you that you're about to replace it. Now, since we named our file Empty Workbook, and the file on the screen is no longer empty, it would make sense to give this version of the file a different name. To do that, we need to revisit the Save As dialog box. The way we do that is just click Save As. Here we can see our original version, Empty Workbook, right here. But now we're going to save this with a different name. This way we're going to have 2 versions in our document library, the original Empty Workbook and then this new modified version. So let's answer the 3 questions again. But before we do, I should mention that if you don't see libraries and documents on your computer, don't get too concerned about that. Earlier versions of Windows save things into a folder called My Documents. I'm using Windows 7 as the operating system as I record these videos, but you might be using Windows XP or Windows Vista. So don't get excited if your address bar doesn't contain the word libraries. Documents, My Documents, anything of the sort will be okay for now. Now, let's get back to the 3 questions. Where's it going? Into the Documents folder. What's it called? Well, let's give it a different file name. Let's call it Important Stuff. And finally, does anybody else need to use this file? The answer is no, so it's okay to go ahead and save it as an Excel workbook. We'll just click Save. And now when we come back to the Home tab, you can see in the title bar that the title has been changed to Important Stuff. So you should know that we now have 2 versions of this file. We can easily go to File and Open, and this will open into the last folder that we visited, which is the Documents folder in my case, and there you can see both of those files sitting side by side. The Important Stuff workbook is this one right here that we have in the background. We'll just cancel out of there and go back to the workbook. Let's close the Important Stuff workbook by clicking the small X in the top right-hand corner, the Close Window button. Since we had just saved that file and hadn't made any changes to it, Excel just went ahead and closed it and didn't ask us if we wanted to save changes. Next, we'll open another file from the Projects File folder. I'll just go to File and Open and navigate to my desktop where I've located that file, and then open Project Files, Lesson 2, and Eastern Revenue. Here's the scenario. This is a workbook we created to chart the total revenue of one of the divisions in our company. We've decided to put it on a flash drive and take it home with us to work on it there. The problem is that our home computer uses an older version of Office 2003 to be exact. This means that our home computer won't be able to work with the file as it is. We'll have to solve this problem by saving this workbook as an Excel 97 2003 workbook. So here we go. File and Save As. Remember, you have to go to Save As anytime you want to change the location, the file name, or the type. And we're going to be changing the location and the type this time. So Save As, and let's ask ourselves the 3 questions. First off, where's it going? Well, right now it looks like it's going into the Documents folder. I want it to go onto my flash drive. So we're going to have to change this by going to Computer. And if you're using Windows 7 and don't see the navigation pane on the left of your screen, you can go to Organize, Layout, and put a check mark next to Navigation pane. If you're working in Windows XP, you should see an icon on the left-hand side called My Computer. I'm going to click Computer and then navigate to the flash drive, which in my case is Removable Disk H. When I double-click on that, I'll see that there's nothing on that flash drive right now. So, the first question, where's it going, is now solved. Removable Disk H. The second question, what's it called, is Eastern Revenue. That's fine, I don't need to change that. And the third question, does anybody else need to use this? Well, no, but I do need to use it at home on a PC that doesn't have 2010. So I need to change the file type. So the way we'll do that is click the drop-down arrow here and change this to Excel 97 2003 Workbook. Go ahead and click Save. And because we're saving into an older version, we now see the Compatibility Checker dialog box come up. This dialog box tells us anything that won't play well in the 2003 version. As it turns out, there's not too much for us to be concerned with in this workbook, so we'll just click Continue, and we'll come back and talk more about the Compatibility Checker when we get into the Intermediate Level 2 courses. It's now the next morning, and we're back at the office. We've made changes to the Eastern Sales Report at home, and we're now ready to update the original file on our Office PC with the changes we made last night. So, we're going to need to open the file from our flash drive and then resave it onto our PC from the old version now coming forward into the new version. Here we go. File, Open, navigate to the flash drive. So I'll go to Computer, open Removable Disk H, and there's the Eastern Revenue Report. We can double click on it to open it, and right away we can see that we've made some changes. We've changed the pie chart into a column chart and changed some colors. But more important than that, if you look in the title bar, you'll now see the file name says Eastern Revenue Compatibility Mode. Well, what the heck is that? Well, Compatibility Mode is the way a workbook opens when you try to open a 2003 workbook in Excel 2010, or in Excel 2007 for that matter. In a nutshell, Compatibility Mode means you're working with an old document, even though you're in Excel 2010. And any of the features from 2010 that the old version doesn't know anything about aren't going to be available right now. To give you an example of this, remember in our first video together, we saw that there were over 1 million rows in a 2010 workbook. We did that by hitting Control and down arrow, and we could see that we got clear down to the bottom of the worksheet. But here we're at the bottom of this worksheet, and there's only 65,536 rows. That's the limit of an Excel 2003 document. If we do Control right arrow, you'll see that there's only 256 columns. That's what that IV stands for, by the way. And you'll remember that in a 2010 document, there's over 16,000 columns. So there's a big difference here. So this document in compatibility mode is being limited to the things that the 2003 version would know how to work with. Control Home to get back to the top. Okay, so what we're going to do now is save this document back into the Project Files folder, overwrite the original Eastern Revenue that we started with last night, and in the process, save this as a 2010 document. Okay, it's actually a lot easier to do than it sounds, so here we go. File and Save As. Remember, we need to go to Save As anytime you're going to change the location, the file name, or the type. We're going to change the location and the type. Now we need to navigate into the Project Files folder again, so we'll go back to the desktop, open Project Files, and Lesson 2. Now, we ought to be scratching our head at this point going, what happened to the original file that was in the Project Files folder? The original Eastern Revenue file that was there last night, the one that I copied. It looks like it's not here in this folder. Well, it actually is there. It's just being hidden or filtered out, because this window right now is only showing us any files in that folder that are of a 97-2003 nature. As soon as we change the file type to say that we want to change this file into an Excel workbook, now you'll be able to see those 2010 files already in there. Okay, so all we have to do is click Save, and when we do this, it's going to ask us if we want to overwrite this original Eastern Revenue with the one that we're working with right now. And we'll just say yes. Now you can see that it still says we're in compatibility mode, but what we'll do here is close the workbook and then reopen it from the Project Files folder. And there you go. There's our new updated version back in the 2010 format. After a long night of working at home with our feet up on the couch and the TV playing softly in the background.